Chapter 2. Jazzy hadn't planned to go to the grief group that Tuesday evening. Hell, she didn't even know there was such a thing. What she'd planned for was a quiet night at home alone. She'd just settled down on the couch with a can of honey-roasted peanuts and a glass of wine, when a voice popped into her head. "You really need to go out tonight." It came through real soft and low, like it was only a suggestion. As if. Ignoring it wasn't an option, she knew that much. When she'd heard voices like this in the past, she'd tried to ignore them, but that never worked. They didn't let up, for the most part, and eventually she'd get an uncomfortable nagging feeling, as if she'd forgotten to do something important. And then it just got worse, and the rest of the night she would pace around the apartment suffering from a bad case of free-floating anxiety. Total madness that way. Easier just to give in. She called her brother, Dylan, at work to let him know she was going out and would probably need a ride home later. Where she was going, she couldn't really say. He understood, though. This had been going on since they were little kids. Their grandmother went through the same thing. Voices would come into her head like she was getting a phone call from the universe, and she'd drop everything to do whatever was needed. "They're guiding you, Jazzy," Grandma had said over and over again. "These voices, you get them for a reason." She also said every person on the planet had the potential to get them, but few did. And if Jazzy did as the voices asked, wondrous things would happen. If she ignored them, she'd never know what might have happened. What Grandma hadn't told her at the time was that both of them heard dead people. That would have freaked out any 10-year-old. By the time she understood, she was used to having ghosts invade her thoughts. It was weird, but it was her very own version of weird. Everybody had something. And now, ironically and comfortingly enough, Grandma was her most frequent spirit visitor. Just like when she was alive, her energy was pure joy, and her advice was designed to make Jazzy think. Tonight, though, she had a different visitor. After Jazzy finished telling Dylan she was going out, she downed the wine and set the glass in the sink when the unfamiliar voice came back again. "You really need to go out tonight." Talk about nagging. Hello? She'd barely had time to get out the door. Such impatience. "Maybe I should go out," she said, trying out the words. She had a sudden feeling of confirmation, like, yes, now you've got it. She could tell it was a female spirit. Young, maybe about her age, 22. How sad to die before you'd really lived. But maybe she, Jazzy, could do something that would make a difference. Jazzy filled her big bag with everything she thought she'd need and left the apartment, locking the door behind her. Dylan had the car, so her traveling options were limited, but she wasn't worried. It would all work out somehow. She walked down the street, purposely pausing by the bus stop in case that was the plan, but something inside of her said to keep going. 15 minutes later, her neighbor Greta pulled up alongside her and called out, "Hey, Jazzy, you need a ride?" Greta lived in the apartment next to them and was, Jazzy had decided, one of the best people on the planet. A person really couldn't not like her, unless they were, really evil or something. It turned out Greta was headed to the rec center to take a knitting class. Something about the words rec center clicked with her, or rather, clicked with the voice in her head. She told Greta that, oddly enough, she herself was headed to the rec center and would love a ride. "Such a coincidence," Greta said, smiling. Jazzy climbed into the car, feeling certain now she was on the right path. "What wonderful weather we're having," Greta said, pulling away from the curb. "We're finally getting that rain we need. I love the way the air feels after a good rain." Jazzy listened politely, looking out the window as buildings and street signs whizzed by. How lucky for her Greta had come by. Of course, she knew it wasn't luck. It was meant to be. If things worked out the way they usually did, Jazzy knew that once she arrived at the rec center, she'd be led to the one person who needed something only she could give, and they'd connect somehow. That was always how it went. There was no point in overthinking it. For now, she was content to look out the window and listen to Greta excitedly talk about the yarn and knitting needles she'd recently bought. Alpaca wool was really soft, Greta said.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.